right, welcome to TOKY Office Hours. This is our October 2025 edition, and we're happy to have Josh Miles with us today. Josh, why don't you start by just telling us a little bit about what you're doing these days, your firm, and I know we're going to talk a bit about video, so you can kind of segue into how video is playing a part in what you're doing.
Yeah, well, it's great to be here. Thanks for the invite. Uh, I've been kind of in and around the AEC space since about 2008, I think. And if any listeners were familiar with my old company, Miles Design, or we eventually became Miles Herndon when I brought on a partner, and then I eventually sold that firm to my partner in 2018 and went to go work at headquarters for SMPS. Um, which was about the most convoluted thing possible because I went from selling SMPS on the rebrand and kind of leading the strategy on that to selling the agency and then becoming the client kind of overnight. So that was a really cool thing to see that through completion and to help SMPS execute on that both at a headquarters level and at all the local chapters. But one of the interesting things that happened during my tenure at SMPS from the start of 2019 to 21, of course, was COVID. We had a really great video team that we worked with that I really enjoyed using, based in Virginia near Alexandria, where headquarters was based. And I was remote in Indianapolis for that whole time, so sort of back and forth. But during COVID, we lost that video team because they pivoted completely to audio. So they decided no more video. We don't have enough clients who are allowing us to be there in person. So we're going to completely do audio podcasting. And so as we were scrambling and everybody was on Zoom, and I fortunately had a little bit of experience with that prior to COVID, just because I was remote from the start. But then I was going down the YouTube rabbit hole of learning about video and photography and cameras. I loved that stuff as a kid and played with it, and never really did it professionally though. So I had to very quickly learn how to take our crummy Zoom footage and make cool stuff out of it. Um, Make things for consumption for our membership, and make even little sizzle and promotional videos out of stock video, and how to pull things together and make it sound right, make the audio work. So overnight, I was really kind of thrust into a video role, all while still trying to be chief marketing officer of the organization. So when I left to do my own thing in 2021 to launch Bold Brand full time, we were kind of a mix of, uh, not knowing what the market was going to want out of me just yet, kind of a mix of brand and consulting, more fractional chief marketing officer work, which is really what I thought would be 100% of my work when I went out. But video in 2025 has turned out to be over half of the work that I'm doing today. So it's been a really fun ride, and I'm really passionate and enjoying the video side as well.
Right. So I think you can imagine what is valuable in video for AEC firms if you think about, I don't know, like case studies or something like that. But that's just me imagining. What kinds of things are you doing? How are your AEC clients in particular finding value in video today?
It's probably not too different from when I was talking mostly brand and website back in the day in 2011, 2012. I think that was probably the first times that I was hearing clients say to me, "Hey, we're interested in new business, we're interested in new work, but this brand, this website is really about talent.
Hmm.
We want to attract and retain the best talent. We want to look the part." We had one client who said they were on the interior design side of things, and they had a great interior designer, and they had an open position, and the woman's roommate was also a interior designer, and she was like, "Hey, you should just come work with us." And her roommate said, "Okay, let me check out the website and see what you do." And this was before we had done any work for them yet. And she said, "I don't think I'm going to take the interview. It doesn't look that cool." So it was like,
Yeah.
literally even knowing firsthand a person who worked there and that she liked her job and liked her work, she almost declined the opportunity to come in for the interview because the website didn't tell the story. And I think that's where a lot of firms are today with video. So a long way around the house to your answer. A lot of the video that we're doing is storytelling, especially employees and principals to kind of show like if you're going to come work here, these are the types of people who work here. This is the vibe. This is the level of challenge of the projects, and you can tell on somebody's face if they're being legit or not.
Right.
Um, I mean, I think the most magical thing about our industry for video is that, people have said over and over and over again, people in AEC, it's really relationship driven, right? It's you like, and trust that person at that firm before you say, I'm going to go work for them or work with them. And video just has this ability to, you sort of get a little cheat, right? You get to see what they're like. You get to see what their personality is, how they speak, how they talk to the camera. And I don't know about you, but I watch a lot of YouTube, and I feel like I feel like I get to know these YouTubers who, if I saw them on the street, I'd be excited, be like, "Oh, hey, good to see you," and they wouldn't know who I was. But I feel like
Totally.
I've
Yeah.
created a relationship with them
Right.
because
Yeah.
I consume their content all the time.
Yeah, my brother and I collect vintage computers, and every year in September we go to this is totally nerdy, but we go to this big vintage computer festival in Chicago. And there's, a bunch of YouTube personalities, influencers, whatever it is that you want to call them, that are in this space, and they come to the event, and there's kind of a corner set up for them, and there's a session that they do. And it was nonstop for 2.5 days, the line of people coming to meet them, because they did exactly what you said. They formed a relationship with them that's one directional, but
Mhm.
incredibly meaningful to them. So when you're talking to clients or potential clients, what's the big misconceptions or challenges that they think is going to make it difficult to produce video content, for their website or for whatever?
Well, I think especially for a firm who hasn't dipped a toe into video yet, it can be really overwhelming because they don't know what they don't know. And they're starting to think about like, well, what do we need to have? What do we figure out? What do we need to get straight before we can start? And the good news is I kind of bring all that with me. So um, I think the best video projects start with a really strong pre-production process. And it's not any different from any other kind of marketing thing, but talking about really what are the goals of
Mhm.
the video and really what's the strategy that we want to pursue here? How do we connect the goals that we have to the tactics that we're using in video to accomplish those things? Is this scripted? Is it off the cuff? Is it reading from a teleprompter? Is it, purely a sizzle video? Is it, just B-roll of our team doing their thing, cut to interesting music to kind of give a vibe? A lot of this is a trend too in terms of websites. A lot of AEC websites will do like ambient video as a header, maybe on some of their pages, where there's just like something moving and
Right.
interesting to kind of show. It's sort of all about setting that mood, and so there are just so many things that we can do with video. Again, that pre-production process of planning out what you want to do. You can make a video, you can make a video. It's just like
Right.
a like it's construction. It's how big of a process is this? Um, for me, I always enjoy having a thorough enough plan going into it that we know, okay, what all can we do while we're there?
Mhm.
So if we're on site shooting for a day or two or three, how many different pieces of content might we be able to create from that? Not just making one thing, but maybe there's multiple videos that are the output from this shoot.
Yeah, you can get a lot of mileage out of the footage that you capture, if you think about it, up front and you plan for it. So are you also doing case studies, or is this really a lot more these days about culture and about the internal team?
Yeah, I would say the majority of the work that I've done, again, this is 4 years in, so
Hmm.
and there's just one of me, but the majority of video work that I've done so far has been very people and story driven. So they're either, what I would call like an about us or a manifesto kind of video. So it's more of the 2, 3 minute why we exist video or the couple minute long employee testimonial or like specific issue. Um, and then also I've had a fair number of clients who do, small private events. And so they want to create both recaps of what the event is about, why you should attend, testimonials of people talking about why they were there, and sort of the B-roll showing what the event is like. But the thing that I've pitched a couple times, and I'm gonna keep pitching it, and if anybody's listening and wants to work on this together, it'd be awesome. I'd love to do a real true documentary on
Hmm.
a big, meaningful project, and, like, I'd love to get in early. You've got the establishing drone shot of the site, and you get the client talking about their vision for this place, whether it's a hospital or university campus or whatever, how it's gonna change the world, how it's gonna impact their local community. And then we show the process, the ups and the downs and the change orders and, "Oh gosh, this thing that we ordered isn't the right size of door and it's not gonna
Right.
fit." And kind of the drama that I think could unfold over a true project documentary. And this certainly is not a fit for every single project in
Right.
AEC, but I think it could be a really interesting, 5, 10, 30 minute documentary. I think could be a really cool piece.
Yeah, I think that would be amazing. Particularly if you were doing something like a hospital or a higher ed project that required a capital campaign. So there's a lot of either community engagement or fundraising engagement or different kinds of stakeholders. So um, not only does the your client get what amounts to an incredible in-depth case study of the project, but also one that illustrates how they work. Because you talk about change orders and things like that. Those are the realities of the work, but it's how you deal with those things. And as we talked about a second ago, the more that you're getting to see the project manager and see the architect or the engineers that are working on the project, the more you develop that relationship with them. And so that's a great benefit to the client, but it it easily becomes an additional value add benefit to to their client, to the institution. And I could imagine that if you thought about this far enough in advance, you could actually make this part of the pitch up front, right? You could come
Yeah.
into the client and say, not only are we going to design an amazing building and do all of these things that you're hiring us to do, but we also are intending to create a documentary of this, and you will be one of the recipients to be able to use this however you want. That would that could be, I don't know, it could be a game changer for a race for a project that's really tight.
Yeah, I could
Um,
totally see somebody like a GC or an architect wanting to, kind of be the lead client for that
yeah,
project, but also all of the other teaming partners who are in that could all be
right.
featured and kind of have their little moment on the big screen, if you will, for the part of telling their side of the story.
Right, and, depending on how it's structured, you could even amortize the cost across, multiple partners in a joint venture or what have you. That could be super, super interesting. I hope you find somebody, and if you do, let me know because
Yes.
I kinda wanna follow along with that process. Sandra in the chat, said, "It's a great value-added benefit and builds trust." Um, so I would completely agree with that. So, video I think video can be a little intimidating for folks, um, particularly when you have a camera pointed at you.
Mhm.
And I think sometimes that can be a barrier to selling a project in when you start telling the CEO or principals or whoever that we're going to put you on camera.
Mhm.
What what can our audience do to help ease those concerns? And what do you do in the moment to get the best version of them? Help put them at ease. Get that best version of them.
Yeah, that's a great question. So a couple different pieces of that. One, I think frankly most corporate video is terrible.
Oh, completely
Uh
agree.
it's unwatchable, it's dull. It's a story that nobody wants to hear or it's just rattling on. So
Hmm.
again, pre-production has a lot to do with what's the story we're going to tell and how are we going to do this differently. But also it's the lighting, it's the color grading, it's the music, it's the editing is really a big piece of that.
Right.
And, I'm passionate about creating videos for my corporate clients who are things that they would want to watch. And then
Hmm.
when they watch it, they're like, oh, this feels like a documentary. This feels like a movie. This feels like a real interview. It's not just blasting me with light in the front and I'm all washed out and there's no interest in the shot. I
Right.
mean, even today, like we're just here in my studio, but I want to have shape to my face. I want to see a
Hmm.
little bit of shadow on one side and highlight on the other. And then when we're interviewing your CEO, I don't want your CEO to stare down the barrel of the lens.
Right.
A more documentary style thing would be I'm talking to your CEO a little bit off camera. So it's never this straight on awful thing or they're looking over here and we've got multiple camera angles and all the
Hmm.
things to try to make it feel like a very professional setup and not feel so much like you're staring into the abyss of this this circle on the front of the camera with
Yeah.
all the lights blasting in the face.
Yeah.
Um, in addition to that, there's also, as I mentioned before, that we can use teleprompters if that's helpful. If they're just going to recount a story, sometimes it's hard to rattle that all off. But even with the two camera setup, you can edit a sentence where there's a pause
Hmm.
and you take the pause out and you go to camera 2 and it all sounds like it works really nicely and smoothly together. So, it's hard to talk somebody through that if they've not been through that process before to understand, like, how good you can make them look and sound, but, that's my job as kind of the mastermind behind the video
Yeah.
to make it all come together and be something you wanna watch, be something that you're proud to send to other people. My friends all the time were like, "Oh, we just did a video last year and I'm in it and I can't stand to watch it." Like
Right.
that's
Yeah.
that's an awful combination.
Yeah, exactly. So Sandra in the chat said, "Do you find candid or group interviews to seem more natural and relaxed? I find it more authentic to see several folks having a chat."
Yeah, I do enjoy the several folks having a chat concept. And again, more often than not, it's me interviewing somebody. So like I'm not featured in the video. You don't see
Right.
me or hear me, but you kind of see them reacting to
Reacting.
me. It's kind of a standard thing that you would see in most documentaries too.
Right. Yeah. Um, Sandra, thank you for that question. And anyone that's on the call, if you want to either raise your hand or put a question in the chat, we'll be happy to answer it. But we're just going to continue having this conversation because I'm having fun. Um, so I have a good friend who has worked on a lot of video and is a musician, and he likes to say that audio is 80% of a good video. I'm making the statistic up, but you get the
Right.
general idea. Um, what's the How do you approach the audio side of it to make sure that what you're getting sounds good?
Yeah, I'm pretty adamant that that's true as well. Having a great microphone is a large percentage of that. The other thing
Mm.
that's amazing that has happened over the last few years, kind of flown under the radar largely in the AI conversation, is the ability for AI to both kind of sweeten the vocal sound, but also remove background noise. Where
Right.
before if I was in any facility, I'd be like, how do you turn off the HVAC? How do you turn off the fans? What's that buzzing? I'm hearing the refrigerator down the hall. It's AI can take out all of that in one click. So
Yeah.
the fact that we can get to really clean, good audio with a microphone like what you and I are both using right now, these are great at picking up sounds up close, and you really
Hmm.
have to get close to them or get the audio kind of just out of the shot
Right.
is what we're normally doing. Um, but then also, I'm sort of OCD about I wanna have, like, multiple options, so I'll usually have a lavalier and a boom mic, and I've got
Hmm.
the on-camera mic, so I can get all that, synced and sounding really good, and it's not just about the vocal too, it's also the sound design and the music underneath, that the music is not dominating over the person, you can still hear what they're saying, and
Right.
then you've got all those little, on when you have B-roll video of maybe a construction scene or, a drone shot of a flying in to establish a site, that you're not just using the sounds that the camera picked up at the day, you're also kind of building that back with little whooshes or hits or little details to make it interesting for the person listening, or even sort of, you'll see this a lot if you're paying attention in a movie or in a TV show. You start to hear the sound from the next scene before you see the next scene,
Oh,
which is
interesting.
that concept is called a J or an L cut, because the sound kind of ducks out further than the scene. So you hear like the background noise of the cars on the street before the camera has transitioned, that you see it. It's just a thing that as humans we like that. Our brains like that little tie-in, and it's a fun little way to just make it that much nicer.
Yeah, I have never noticed that, and I'll be paying attention for it. I mean, I find it really helpful to watch everything from news broadcasts to movies and TV to kind of see what they're doing, but I had never picked up on that, and I'm sure that now
Mhm.
I won't be able to not hear it, or see it the next thing that I watch. Which is actually an interesting, segue to another question. So when we started this conversation, you were talking about your transition from running an agency to being, part of the SMPS team and then going back out on your own. And as before you made that transition at SMPS, thanks to, the pandemic, you kind of had to take over doing a lot of video stuff yourself. How much hands-on experience, doing video work did you have prior to that? And how did you really learn? Is it if someone that's listening wants to get in and start doing some of this stuff themselves, what's the right or best approach to that?
Well, the prior step to pandemic and SMPS was, I ran a podcast for many years called Obsessed with Design. We eventually changed it just to Obsessed Show, because that's what the URL and the social handles were, all Obsessed Shows. So we're like, why don't we just call it what the domain name is? But it was largely recorded on Skype back in the
Mhm.
day.
Yeah.
And, most of the time, I would even tell my guests, like, "Hey, you can just turn your camera off because all we're gonna use is the audio." And it kinda makes me sad looking back, because I had these great interviews with these, famous graphic designers like Michael Beirut and Paula Scher and Aaron
Oh, wow.
Draplin, and some real heavy hitters in the graphic design space, if anybody's nerdy enough to know who those folks are.
I am.
And largely just, kept the audio and threw away the video. But, fast forward to the YouTube days, man, I would love to have repurposed that stuff and published the video too. But one episode, a couple years in, I decided, like, I'm gonna record a video on this episode. It's gonna be a standalone. And it was kind of both a video experiment and it was an SEO experiment. So it's like, I'm
Mhm.
gonna do a episode that is focused on all the other design podcasts that I listen to. And we're going to call this the best design podcasts. And I'm not even going to mention my show because you're already listening or watching my show. And the SEO play is we'll create the post that says, these are the best design podcasts. And so
Right.
our show would eventually rank for that. And we kind of dominated search for that term for years. And it's probably still a top top 3 search result. If you look for best design podcasts, you'll find a Perception Show. But I filmed that on my iPhone, and I literally taped my iPhone to my monitor so that I could record it. And after I watched it back, I was like, "Yeah, that'll work. I'll use it." Um, but it doesn't look right, and I'm not
Mhm.
sure why.
Right.
So I had taken one whole photography class in college, and it was black and white only, and it was all film and developing our own stuff. So I understood like exposure, triangle basics, and all those things. But like, why doesn't my phone look like what I want a camera to look like? And it sent me down that YouTube search for, okay, what's a good beginner camera? What's a good beginner video camera? What has different lenses and lighting and audio? And so I really just started becoming passionate about it. Thankfully, before I needed to use those skills at SMPS, but I was mostly just doing work for myself. So I was created my own YouTube channel. I was doing these, I called them 59-second Friday, and it was these quick marketing tips for different things. And I think I had so many different kinds of content
Mhm.
that YouTube had no idea what my channel was supposed to be about. So it never really took off. But I, had a video about my one wheel that I had bought, and that gets tens of thousands of views. But like then I have a 59-second Friday on email marketing, and it gets like 1,000. So it was
Right.
like just kind of all over the place. But that was really how I got uh to initially learn about it. And there was a local coffee shop down the street from me in Indianapolis, and I said, "Hey, let me make a video for you." Like, there's no cost. I knew them, and I'm like, "All right." And it took me like a year in
Mm.
my free time to come back and shoot some more and figure out what else I needed and who's going to do the voiceover and what music do we like, and ended up creating this piece that I was really proud of. And I was like, I think if I could get a job done faster than a year from now, I could probably charge for it.
Right.
But that was all about the time that, you know, COVID hit and everything else. So,
You were sort of
uh,
plunged into the deep end at that point.
yeah, so I was already like heavily nerding out. I bought my first Canon camera, was a Rebel or something like
Mhm.
that, and nothing too advanced. But that's also timing wise where mirrorless cameras started taking off, and so I sort of self decided I'm gonna be part of this Canon ecosystem, and I'm still the place that I'm playing, and a lot of my gear is all Canon, but I've amassed quite the collection of
Collection of
lenses and
yeah.
bodies and lighting and microphones and drones and, all the things.
Yeah. I haven't gotten into the drones. I've been, shooting stills for a long time, and I can't settle on a single camera system, so I think I have 3 at
Yeah.
this point, but, I s it's interesting talking about YouTube, talking about the algorithm. I mean, YouTube is, I think, what, the 2nd biggest search engine after Google itself. So when we're creating content and we're putting it out there, it's not just what we're putting on the website. It's putting it on YouTube and people finding it that way. But another way to create regular content, because I think if you're just thinking about, well, we're going to create an about video, or we're going to do kind of a series of more documentary style um, content, interviews with staff, or, the big documentary about a project, all um, great ideas, bigger investments, maybe, if not
Mhm.
in dollars, certainly sort of in mind share and what's it going to take to get this done. Um, but creating, like you were talking about, creating quicker content that you can put out on YouTube makes me think about doing podcasts and shorts and things like that. And
Mhm.
you've done a couple of podcasts at this point. If someone's interested in getting started doing that, what's walk us through a little bit of the mental process of what do we need to be thinking about if we want to launch a podcast?
Yeah, I mean, I would think today, so totally correct. YouTube is the second largest search engine. I don't think we're probably too far behind before we're saying Chat GPT is probably number one or number two. But
Yeah, good point.
at the moment, I think it's still Google and YouTube. But the other interesting YouTube stat is that they've also taken over as the number one place for people to consume podcasts.
Mm,
So if you're taking video into account, it is number one. Where back when I started my first show, it was Apple and Apple only.
right.
And then Spotify showed up as a pretty strong number one, number two. And now, again, if you're including video platforms, YouTube's number one.
Hmm.
So if I were launching a podcast today, which my my new show, the Bold Brand Show, just launched back in May of this year,
Yep.
and we are both audio and video. Um, I don't think video on my subscriber base has surpassed audio yet, but this last couple of episodes, it's showing evidence that it's going to make a run for it. So
Mhm.
um, if I were launching a different show today, I would certainly be thinking video and audio together. And I think it's not one or the other. I really think it's both because you want your audience to be able to consume when and how they want to consume.
Right.
There's a a friend of mine here in Denver who has self-described as my number one fan. She's like, "I love your show. It's my favorite thing that I listen to." And I said, "Wait, are you doing the video or the audio?" And she said, "Yes."
Ah,
So
right.
so she's a great example. If she thinks she's my number one fan and she's listening to both, like that's just great evidence that you never know if you're going to want to listen or if you want to watch or if sometimes I'll play a YouTube video and put my headphones in and go for a run. I'm just going to listen to the
Mm,
conversation even though it's on YouTube. It's just kind
right.
of where I consume a lot of content.
Yeah.
So the outside of thinking about it both in terms of audio and video, I think your microphone is probably the most important thing.
Mhm.
Buy nice or buy it twice or three or four times.
Right.
These Shure mics are really great. It's not the only game in town, but
Yeah.
um, find a show that you like, and if you like how it sounds, figure out what the mic is they're using and just buy that mic.
Yeah.
It's a big investment, but it's totally worth it.
Well, there's a ton of content on YouTube about creating shows. A lot of it put out by um, content creators, but also the tool makers. Whether that's
Mhm.
Rode or it's Shure or the software that we're using to do this show right now is called Ecamm Live. They have a whole series of videos and shows and stuff that they do to really help you get off the ground. How much are you editing the um the podcast? I mean, we talked about the audio sweetening we use for our podcast, which is video and audio. We use Auphonic, uh,
Mhm.
upload the audio to it, and for the audio only version, it cuts out not just the background noise, but dead spaces in between the um just like that. It'll cut those out as well. It's a little bit more challenging to do in a video because it would require having a lot of rapid cuts, which doesn't make sense.
Mhm.
But I also think that the pauses, the things like that are less impactful when you're actually watching the person. It's much more annoying if you're just listening to them and you get the dead spot or you get a lot of the vocal inflections and things in there. But I'm curious, particularly on the video side, how much are you editing that, or are you just recording it and essentially publishing?
No, I'm super hands-on,
Okay.
probably more so than I should be. For a 45 to 60-minute episode, I'm usually spending 2.5 to 3 hours start to finish to edit.
Okay.
So I am doing, for my show, I've got multiple camera angles, um, and we've got a studio set here, so for the few that have been in person, we've got multiple camera angles on both speakers and then kind of a wider shot, and then, getting the sound and the color and everything lined up. If
Mhm.
it were just everything with the interview all in one system, all in one thing, I think I could probably do that inside the we use Riverside to
Yep.
capture ours, and I think you
Mhm.
can edit straight in Riverside, probably hit a button and and pop out a finished video.
Right.
But just with all those other elements, it's complex enough with the different cameras. If I had a crew and a switcher and somebody else to run the production live,
Mhm.
I probably could have a finished episode when I'm done, but we're not quite there yet. So,
Right.
in the future, I'd love to staff up and bring on somebody to help run the show just as we go and export something out with the LUTs baked in and everything all pretty, but we're not there yet.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. But I think what's interesting is it illustrates, at least for me, that there are multiple paths that someone could pursue in order to do this. If you have a good idea, and I think that to me that's the most critical thing, right? What's the thesis behind the show? How are you deciding who, if you have guests, who your guests are going to be, what the topics are going to be around? How does that relate back to your business? Because at the end of the
Mhm.
day, you're probably not doing a podcast for fun. That's also about your business. So, how are you connecting the truth about your business into the content that you're creating, and who are the right people to talk to? I think there's just so many avenues of doing it, but from a technical perspective, it doesn't necessarily have to be um, a complicated thing. It can be as complicated as you want it to be. I think is what the takeaway is.
Yeah, and I think don't get in over your head, bring
Yeah.
on the gear and the things that you already feel a comfort level in doing. And if keeping it down to everything's recorded on your laptop camera with
Hmm.
a nice microphone, I think that's an okay place to start and, ramp up as you and your skill set or your team's skill set, or if you're outsourcing to someone their skill set as well. So don't feel like you got to do all the things
Right.
yourself either.
Well, and that's a good point because you can outsource a lot of it. I'm not sure that you necessarily want to outsource the hosting portion,
Hmm.
but in terms of the production and things, you can definitely outsource all of it if you wanted to. Um, so we're I think we're about 40, 45 minutes in. And I love the conversation, but I want to make sure that we have a chance for anyone to ask questions. So I'm just going to pause for a second here and see, is there anyone that has some questions? We've got Josh. He's got a lot of experience doing video. If you've been thinking about doing video, doing a podcast, doing anything like that, he's a wealth of information. So let's take advantage of that. This is where I should like have queued up some Jeopardy music.
Right.
All right. Well, while folks are thinking about their questions, what's the what's the number one question that you typically get if you're talking about this with
The
a
number
group of
one
people?
question I get about video.
Yeah.
I think, the question that we kind of already touched on a little bit is kind of where would you start? Um, and we hit that kind of from the video podcast angle, but I think also, there are so many things great to say about the phone that's probably in your pocket right now, like especially on the iPhone 17, like the video and photography features that are in that, especially if you're not in the professional camera, photo, video world, just
Right.
pick that up and hit record on a job site. The stabilization, the audio tools, if you're wearing the new AirPods, you get a pretty solid, quick video. If we're talking about like, how do I produce something quickly at an AEC job site and interview somebody, or even throwing on an external microphone, like a little DJI
Those are great.
mic. Those are fantastic. Throw the little wind sock on that if you're out at a job site to keep the wind from being super annoying.
Yep.
And they do a really, really great job. So especially if you're thinking about like, how do I just get some quick clips, something to throw on social media? We don't have a budget. We don't have, or maybe we want to create some of our own videos before we are able to justify budget to do something professional. I
Right.
think that'd be a really great place to start.
Well, that's a good. So we one of our guests asked the question, when shooting on an iPhone, what tips can you give? And I think the first one goes back to the 80% of video is the audio. So making
Mhm.
sure that you have good audio that you're picking up. You mentioned the DJI mics. It's the same company that makes the drones,
Mhm.
and they make a number of different microphones, but the one I'm thinking of, maybe the one that you have, it's a pair of wireless lavalier mics,
Mhm.
and a thing that just clips to your phone. It just plugs into the port on your phone, and immediately the microphone is right here picking up. So you're not trying to pick up from across the room, getting all of that echo. It makes a huge difference in the quality of the video because the iPhone on its own, in a reasonably well lit scene, the video quality is really, really good for the size of the device and all of that. But what else should we be thinking about if we're trying to produce video on an iPhone?
Well, I think you want to think about too, am I shooting vertical? Is this just for social media? Is it just
Mm,
for socials and stories? Or am I shooting for YouTube and I want to shoot something that's more horizontal focused? So even just having straight in your head, where is this going to go? Is it going to go on the website? Well, probably want to shoot that landscape. And if you're going to shoot something just for social media, reels, stories, posts like that, then vertical is probably the way to go. And again, maybe by default, that it just makes sure that you've got the stabilization features turned on and that
mhm.
1x or 0.5x camera, the stabilization is it rivals anything else in the market. There's nobody else who does in-body stabilization that is as smooth. Like you can run or walk with it, and it still just looks like you're on a gimbal or on a rail. It's pretty amazing.
Yeah. I think one thing I might add to that, and this isn't just an iPhone thing, but it's something that until you start editing video, you might not be thinking about. But you talked about in the studio, you have multiple cameras. And so when you want to cut something out of what somebody's saying, rather than having a quick cut that's like a jarring kind of thing, you can move from one camera to the other. Well, you can do something almost like that if you make sure that you leave enough. I'm going to back up. Like if you leave enough room around the person, it's still framed nicely, but you leave enough room around them, then you can, when you make the cut, zoom in a little bit. I mean, we're publishing on YouTube at 1080p typically. I mean, you can publish higher than that, but often you're publishing it at 1080p and the phone will record at 4K. So you can zoom in
Mhm,
to the person, which both gives you creative decision making so that it's not constantly just this same view all the time, but also I can make that cut and I can drop out a portion of it and make it feel more, like a news broadcast rather than just,
mhm.
the sort of quick cuts that sometimes we see in a lot of YouTube videos. So that would be the tip I would add to that. We have another question. How do you handle unique concepts for each firm, particularly in the same industry? So you work a lot, as we do in AEC. You're working with a lot of
Mhm.
architects or engineers. They do a lot of the same things. They may even be in similar geographies because a lot of the firms we work with have offices all over the place. So, how do you make sure that the concept that you're bringing to a podcast or even to the documentary type videos that you're doing is distinct for each firm?
Well, again, my philosophy is your goals guide the strategy and the strategy drives everything else. So even two similar firms may have wildly different goals.
Hmm.
I saw a lady present a couple years ago at Content Marketing World, and she was talking about how, if we look at a bear fishing in the river for salmon, and if another bear sees that tactic of stand in the river and wait for the salmon to fly by and tries to use that tactic in the woods, he's going to starve to death. Like that
Yeah,
tactic only works because you understand the goals and the strategy.
right.
So I think each firm with their unique goals and on top of that, the story that is truly theirs. So
Hmm.
what's their history? What's their philosophy? What are they about? What are they trying to do? It's so easy to say, oh, firms are all the same and they're all just trying to win work and they're all just fighting for the same piece of business. But I think when you really get down to it, the people who run that firm and their approach and their philosophy and their goals are really what's going to drive a very different looking, feeling, sounding story, even if it's two MEP firms who are working primarily in healthcare.
Right. Yeah, we refer to it as brand truth. It's that unique point of view, that unique approach that you're talking about that separates two firms doing the same thing and how they look at the work, how they look at the industry, how they look at their clients, what are the insights that they're bringing to it. It's what ultimately gives you a way to sort of categorize each firm, kind of put them into, we talk about be outside of the box, but when you're trying to buy something, you need to understand it. If you're buying a
Mhm.
car, you need to be able to understand what's the difference between this Mazda and this, Toyota, and kind of categorize them in some way. And it's the same thing with firms. And I think we so often rely on where are we? What are we, what services are we doing? Who are we doing it for? And yet that's
Mhm.
not really different. And that's the kind of thing that allows you to come up with the kind of concepts for a podcast or for whatever it is. So if you don't spend the time to be introspective, and man, this is so hard, particularly for our engineering friends, right? We just want to build things. We want to design things that are efficient and or solid or, gets the job done or whatever that is.
Yeah.
Getting all introspective about, well, why are we doing this and how are we thinking about the industry can be a
Yeah.
little painful sometimes. Um, but I think it's essential to figuring out how you come up with an idea that's unique to you and to your firm.
Yeah, I
Um,
think it comes back to, like, the branding thing too about, like, you have to look the part enough
right.
that you don't look like a retail product as an
Hmm.
engineering firm, but also how do we differentiate and position ourselves uniquely enough while
Right.
still looking the part? It's a little bit paradoxical, but I think, bringing that branding lens to video is really what I'm trying to do. Like, how do I both make you look the part and then help you tell a unique enough story that it really sets you apart from everyone else?
Yeah. One of the folks in our firm has a great analogy for this that I think is worth thinking about. This is going to be, I hope, for someone that moment like when when you described earlier the J cut or the L cut, and now I'm
Yeah.
going to be watching for it everywhere.
Right.
So when you go out to eat, particularly this works really well with a Chinese restaurant because Chinese restaurants are not typically chain restaurants. They're family run businesses. And yet there's a certain visual language that you kind of expect when you go into a Chinese restaurant. And if you walked into a Chinese restaurant and it was all, blue or red and white checkered tablecloths and Chianti bottles and
Mhm.
looking like a French bistro, you would wonder whether or not you're going to get good Chinese food there. On the other hand, we've all walked into multiple Chinese restaurants that you could not tell the difference between this one and the one down the street. The name's the same or similar. Well, we can't tell the difference because we're so English centric that we don't understand. Um,
Yeah.
and they haven't really differentiated. But there's every once in a while you run into one that uses let's just say the tropes of
Mhm.
what a Chinese restaurant is, but they change them in some interesting and unique ways. They do it differently.
Mhm.
They do it at a higher level. They subvert it, not becoming a French bistro, but becoming something that's uniquely them. So I would encourage everyone to, go get some Chinese food and start looking at restaurants and see how they're doing this or not doing it. Because it's the same thing that we need to do with our own firms.
Yeah, there's
Um,
a Chinese place down the street from here that has, there's such a Latin American influence in Denver. Lots
mhm.
of Southwest, lots of Mexican food, but it's a Chinese restaurant. It's got, like, cacti decals on the front of the glass. I'm like, "I've never been in there," but,
Yeah,
I
that's
but I have expectations that it's like this Chinese-Mexican hybrid, and they're like,
right.
"Okay, that could work."
Yeah, speaking of Denver, and not to get too sidetracked on food, and suddenly I'm hungry, but there's an Indian burger bar. There's a few locations. I think it's called Gaia. Have you been
"Oh,
there
no, I
yet?
haven't had this yet." Uh-uh.
Um, there's a few locations. You'll have to look it up. I think it's GAIA. First of all,
Okay.
they're open till 3 in the morning, which just kind of blows my mind. And then
Yeah.
secondly, it's Indian, but it's also pizza and calzones and burgers. So I was in Denver a couple days ago last week. Whenever the AEC AI
Mhm.
conference was, we saw each other there, and I ate there when I first got into town because I got in late, and I had a chicken tikka masala calzone, which on paper does not work. In my mouth, it really, really worked. So shout out
Yes, please.
for Gaia. You got definitely have to check it out. Well, we're coming up on the hour. One last call for questions. Anyone else have a question or want to dig in further on something that you've already asked? And while we're waiting to see that, I think the last question for you, Josh, is if there's one thing that folks should take away from our conversation today, what would that be?
Well, I don't think video is going away. I think we're only going to see more and more and more of that as, even social platforms like Instagram made the pivot a couple of years ago where it used to be very still photo driven. And now, much to the chagrin of photographers, it's very video driven. And I just think we're going to see video continue to take over. So, even if your firm has never experimented with it or dipped a toe at all, again, get out your iPhone, shoot a thing, even if you hate it,
Hmm.
do it again, keep trying, get comfortable with it because I do think we're going to see more and more of this in the future.
That's great.